is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
All right, what is up, guys? We are here in Indianapolis, Indiana at the NFL Combine. I'm Hayley Lewis, joined by Matt Miller, ESPN draft analyst. That's what we're going to call you. You're a jack of all trades, though.
Yeah, if it's football, I can talk about it. That's basically what I tell people.
There you go. The football man, the football insider. And we got a lot to talk about because a lot has gone on, a lot has gone on for us media people and also a lot for those guys on the field and going through those interviews and talking conversations with people. It's a lot. It's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot on the line. So we're trying to figure out what guys kind of increase their value since being here. And maybe we'll even talk about, I'm throwing an audible in here, but maybe we'll even talk about a few who you didn't really expect what you saw.
Yeah. So basically, we're going to talk about players who are now too good to be there at number 32 overall.
Yeah,
so
there you go. Perfect.
Set it up. Here are some players to get excited about that your team is too good to draft.
Here is the professional. I mean, obviously, wrapping it up just perfectly like that. We'll put that as the title for the podcast. But Matt, first off, who stood out to you? Give me a couple of names who you were impressed by what you saw, not only on the field, but maybe in some conversations as well.
Yeah, man, I have to start with Alabama pass rusher Dallas Turner. I think he's the best defensive player in the entire draft. But this year, that might mean that you're drafted at like 11 or 12 overall because we're going to see so many quarterbacks, wide receivers, tackles go in the top 10. But Dallas Turner to have 83-inch arm length, I know that might not mean anything to a lot of people, but when you're a pass rusher and you have 83-inch wingspan, just that ability to keep offensive tackles off your frame is so important, especially because he's 245 pounds. So the arm length is something that really does matter to me. But then to have 4.4 speed and to have that body control and agility to be able to dip around the corner, that is a special pass rusher from an athletic profile. And of course, he had 10.5 sacks and 13 tackles for a loss last year at Alabama. So good player.
Good school, too. I mean, that will definitely increase your capital. But a lot of people really bring a lot of hype around the 40-yard dash. And like you mentioned, it matters in certain terms, right? I mean, of course, to have quickness and everything. But there are certain, guys that we see with these over 200 pounds being able to get these low fours. That's really impressive. Can you maybe dumb it down in like layman's terms, maybe for people who don't follow the NFL Combine as quick or as specific? How much importance do the on-the-field workouts really pose?
Yeah, no, they do matter. And the biggest thing, Haley, is it allows for historical context. So when we watch a quarterback run a 40-yard dash, you can compare that across 40-plus years of data and say, okay, yes, the game has changed, but the greatest quarterbacks of our, maybe even just let's go the last 20 years. So I want to be able to compare, J.J. McCarthy from Michigan, Bo Nix from Oregon. I want to be able to compare those guys to former quarterbacks, not just in the 40-yard dash, but in things like the 3-cone drill, which measures balance and agility and body control, everything that they do here. And that's like the beauty of the Combine. Like the TV stuff is a lot of fun and it pays a lot of our bills. Like what really matters about the Combine is that historical analysis to even say, let's just go back to 2017 when Mahomes was drafted. Now, fast forward 8 drafts later, we want to be able to compare everyone in terms of 40 time, their 10-yard split, all the drills that you do here and say, okay, now we can, look at this in a clean environment instead of GPS tracking because Lord knows what's happening on those, or even a pro day 40 time where the environments are all not the same.
I'm sure Mahomes loves to see his analysis from that 40-yard dash continue to pop up on ESPN and NFL Network as they continue to show his speed. But, it does weigh into how things go and the draft quickly approaching. So we're going to talk through a few more people who maybe increased their capital since they got here to the Combine. A lot of people use this not only as a way to showcase how they are on the field, but also in those interviews. And I think that weighs an important amount or weighs a big amount because when you're talking to these teams, they are also trying to figure out what kind of a person you are, what kind of a leader you are. Who have you thought of as better than maybe you potentially thought of when they came in?
Yeah, so I didn't know what to expect from Rome Odunze, the wide receiver from Washington. So, but everyone told me, like, you're going to fall in love with him as a person. Absolutely true. He's articulate. I mean, I'm married, but... yeah, draft crush.
There you go.
Draft crush levels. I think the way guys handle themselves, a lot of questions get thrown at you in those 15 scrums, and how you handle that. It does say a lot about your maturity, your poise, your sense of humor at times. So he was a big one. Chris Jenkins, the defensive tackle from Michigan, was one of my favorite people I talked to all week, though. He's just a very comfortable human being. Like he has, he has a great sense of humor, a lot of confidence, but not, like we're all like micro psychoanalyzing these guys. And it's like, oh, wow, like you were really confident, but not cocky. And like you were funny, but not rude. And so, But teams are doing the same thing. They get 15 minutes, and you're like, oh, wow, that was a good 15 minutes with that player. And so I'm in a lot of situations doing the same thing. But those were the two guys that I think I enjoyed talking to the most.
Again, for people who might not know exactly how the NFL Combine goes, what are the rules pertaining teams reaching out to players, being able to set up those meetings? How does that look? Because that's behind closed doors. We don't get to see that stuff.
Yeah, so there's two different types of interviews. There's formal, which means I asked to speak to you in a private setting.
Okay.
Usually teams have a hotel like suite or conference room where you walk in, there might be like 8 people and a video camera, and they're like asking you. They can ask you anything they want because
it's your deposition.
It's exactly like that. 15 minutes of private conversation.
Okay.
Just you. You do not have any, like, your agent's not there. Your parents aren't there. It's just you. And then the informal would be like if I saw you at Starbucks, I was like, hey, I'm a scout for the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's exchange phone numbers so that we know how to contact you for workouts or how we can contact you if we're going to draft you. So a lot of times, like if you guys were at the Shrine Game, or like at the Senior Bowl, you'll see team scouts talking to players. They're just trying to nail down that information. Like, who's your agent?
Yeah.
Where are you going to be draft day? What's the phone number to get you at? And so the formal are the ones that matter because those are trying to help you make a decision on who to draft.
How much do you think teams use those interviews versus what they see on the field and what they see from their college film?
Yeah, they do matter a lot. And they matter more so if there's a question mark about the player, whether it's, maybe they have something in their past.
Yeah, like
trying to get cleared up, behavioral off the field. We say off the field, and that's such a big catch-all that sometimes it feels slippery, but you're just trying to figure that out. So, I've heard of prospects who walk into a room and they spend the entire 15 minutes just having a casual conversation. Other times you walk in immediately and you're being yelled at and grilled because they want to try to press you and see how you're going to handle it. So the interviews absolutely matter. And I think they matter a lot as a tiebreaker as well.
Okay.
In this class, we've talked so much about the top 3 receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze. The teams that are actually up there in the draft and can consider drafting them, you're going to use those interviews as a tiebreaker of sorts of. They all have tons of production. They're all, when we do see them test at the pro days, they'll be high testers. So you go back to the interview of like, oh, well, this is the guy we liked versus the guy that maybe we didn't get the best feeling from.
And these interviews, are they allowed to bring up any type of plays to be able to test their football IQ, kind of to see were they just kind of regurgitating what they were given in college, or are they actually able to, adapt and be able to play at the speed of the NFL?
Absolutely. So you might walk in and there might be a whiteboard with a play drawn on it, and they say, break this down. Or they'll have a clean whiteboard and say, draw us your favorite play, and then erase it. And then they'll talk to you for 12 minutes and then say, okay, draw that play again.
This is worse than the ACT.
It's worse than the ACT. Yeah, it's like the ACT meets the Wonderlic meets a deposition meets marriage counseling, I think. Not that I've ever done that. Just to
clarify, I'm in a happy marriage.
Stressful. What would be stressful? That would be stressful. So, but no, they can do whatever they want. And a lot of times you will walk in and they'll have a play on a TV.
Yeah.
And it might be the worst play of your career. Or they'll say, what was the worst play of your college career? And they'll, pull it up and say, okay, walk us through what happened here, right? So every team's different.
Yeah.
You've heard all the questions. Are you a cat person or a dog person? Like, I don't know what that means.
So you could get the fluff questions, or it could be, tell us what happened. Why were you arrested?
Exactly. Yeah.
What was this play call? How would you change it if this was the read, if things were different? So that's stressful. I don't know how players really get prepared for that.
I think we should put all the KCSN crew through one of these where you guys just walk into a room and we grill Tucker Franklin about his week in Indy or something.
Sounds like my Miss America interview. Terrible.
Probably a lot like that.
Terrible. Yeah. Well, okay, so nervousness aside, these players also have to perform on the field. So let's go back to the field workouts. Yeah. And some different things that go on. Obviously, bench press is a fun one to watch as well. We mentioned the 40-yard dash. You mentioned some of the shuttle things or shuttle cones going on. What's maybe one that stands out to you? We saw a crazy vertical the other day as well. How much I know for different positions it weighs differently, but maybe one that stands out to you that you think people maybe don't hone in on as much that is really important?
I think if I could only leave here with one workout, just that data, it would be the 3-cone because it shows bursts. And 3-cone is like, imagine an L and you got to run up, back, and then around. And so it shows burst, it shows balance, body control, agility. You can even see things like stiffness in a player's hips or knees. So like
that hip fluidity, isn't that what we're calling it?
Exactly. Gotta have it if you do. So to bring it home to you guys, Patrick Mahomes is a great example of someone who would dominate the 3-cone because short area explosiveness, awesome flexibility, really good body control, and then the foot speed. like, I know Pat hates when they run his 40. By the way, he would run so much faster now than he did then.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it's a matter of, so like the 3-cone is something that it is in an athletic event, whereas the 40s, you can train for the 40 and almost manipulate it if you get your start right, if you really know what you're doing. Which is what these guys have been training for months. So I would take the 3-cone over anything else.
I don't know if you saw it, but Brady actually ran his 40 time quicker. Is he 46, 47?
46 years old.
Yeah, I ran it quicker than he did when he was at the combine, which is just insane to see that development.
I'm 40 years old, and I would never run a 40-yard dash again in my life. So
you guys will, if you're listening to this and you're tuning in later, Tucker and myself and BJ are all going to go to the NFL draft. Is it the fan experience? The combine fan experience. And we're all going to put our skills to the test. So we'll see who runs the fastest 40.
I will be in the stadium watching the less athletic people than you guys.
Oh, yes, of course.
I want those numbers when they come in.
Let's talk about those less athletic people, those prospects. Anyone else who kind of caught your eye that maybe it was exactly what you thought they were going to be? You know, there's a lot of people who show up, you think they have a high quality going in, and they prove it there, and you're like, all right, we'll see you in the first round, bud.
The cool thing about this is exactly that, right? But it is a process. And so for me, you watch a guy on tape, and then you watch them at like the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Game, and then you come here and you try to really reconcile those three things together.
Yeah.
So Quinyon Mitchell, the corner from Toledo, has been that player who, wow, I really liked the film, but I wondered, okay, you're dominating at Toledo.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do that against like Texas and Alabama and Georgia? Go to the Senior Bowl. He did. He dominated everyone. And then he comes here and runs a 4.33 in the 40-yard dash, and also had over 20 bench press reps of 225 pounds. So for a cornerback to have that strength and that speed, and then when you watch him play on Saturdays, you see it. It's all right there. So that's one of the guys where maybe when we were back in like January, you thought maybe a second round grade.
Yeah.
Now it's like top 20 is much more realistic. And it is an example of like why this process can help players so much if they buy in on it.
Would you say consistency is key when you're talking about things, watching their tape throughout college, then going to things like either the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl? Performing the same way, showing what you did on tape there, and then also consistently showing that here. Is that what I guess maybe put me more in the GM's and the head coach's mindset of what exactly are they trying to key in on?
Yeah, I mean, to key in on like who you are truly as a player, or like what your abilities are. Because so like a lot of times we'll watch college games, and in college those coaches are trying to win games. They're not trying to put you in the NFL. And so a lot of times there are questions about, well, can he do this? Or can he do that, or why didn't you do this? And I think the all-star games and the combine can help kind of answer some of those questions, but ultimately you do love consistency because then there are fewer question marks. That's why players like Caleb Williams will go first overall. It's why Jaden Daniels will go very highly as well, because you've seen that consistency. There are no really surprises in their game. I think especially for like offensive linemen, defensive linemen, you want that consistency of, okay, like we saw you do this for 2 to 3 years in college, and then you continue to check those boxes.
You bring up a guy like Caleb Williams, who was very hyped up and arguably, I mean, it understands why, he backs it up. And then the college season doesn't go the way that he anticipated. Yeah. Now, does that make him a worse quarterback? Not necessarily. How do teams kind of address those situations where this guy has all this hype, his team didn't necessarily perform, and that doesn't always mean that you're the best player.
Right.
How do you guys assess, and even in your position in media, assess the true value of a guy like that?
Yeah, that's where I was. You put him in a bubble.
Yeah.
You kind of try to block out all the other noise. Even like USC went 7-5 this year. In their losses, they allowed 40.8 points a game. So it's like, that's really, really bad.
Yeah.
Caleb doesn't play defense.
Right.
He can't affect that. So what I try to do, and this is what teams try to do as well, look at the things that the player you're evaluating affected. The fact that they averaged like 37 points a game in those losses says, man, he was doing everything he could. Or so a fun thing to do is let's look at how many other USC offensive players will be drafted. Not many.
There you go.
Like their running back will be a day 3 pick.
Yeah.
One of their wide receivers, Brendan Rice, has a chance to be a day 2 pick. Another one, Taj Washington, will be a late round pick. None of their offensive line. And one guy on defense. So this is not the USC of like the Matt Leinart days. This is a down year for USC. And so that's, when you want context for everything, basically. And so for Caleb, or on the other side of it, a Jaden Daniels or a JJ McCarthy, you're just trying to find context.
Okay. All right. Well, let's find some context around the Chiefs. And I know that this has probably been a topic that, and again, I told you we were going to talk about something, and then I have completely changed everything. Yeah. So here we are on my new little ship that I'm sailing. I want to talk more about kind of some of the Chiefs' needs at the position, or at certain positions, because I feel like a lot of people are falling in between two categories. They're saying they either need a wide receiver first, that's the number one concern, or the left tackle is the number one concern. Obviously, you have to protect a guy worth $500 million, and that's really going to be important. If you were in Brett Veach's seat, what would you be, now that you've seen the combine, and I know there's still more to come, there's O-line's going to perform tomorrow, what would you maybe be targeting? What would you be after?
Yeah, I think the easy answer, and people are not going to like this, is what do you do in free agency? If you sign someone like Mike Evans at wide receiver,
right? Okay,
cool. Left tackle becomes the next priority. If you can sign someone like Tyron Smith at left tackle, then wide receiver becomes your first draft priority. So the NFL does such a great job of building all this draft intrigue in January, February, and then we say, hey, free agency is going to come and ruin all the things that you thought a team was going to do. So I do that, like, truly, that is like, that's how I look at this. And we were in the same spot a year ago of how are they going to fix the right tackle position? Yeah. Well, they signed Juwan Taylor to a massive contract. And so that's where I think it is again of, yes, those are the two big, clearly defined needs. Let's see which one, or maybe both get filled in free agency. And then in the draft, you have ultimate flexibility to say, who's the best player available for us at pick 32? And that's where we'll go.
Has there been anyone that you've seen so far playing, or on the field workouts or in these interviews that you're like, oh, that would be a perfect fit for Kansas City?
Yeah, the problem is I do that with too many players, and it's all so realistically.
Okay,
Darius Robinson from Missouri. The first time I watched him play, I thought that's a Spags defensive lineman.
Really,
he's built a lot like Charles Omenihu. You know, 6'5", 290 pounds, can play inside or outside. Really good strength, really good first step quickness. And depending on what happens with Chris Jones, depending on Omenihu's injury, Mike Danis, a free agent. So is defensive lineman a primary need at 32? Maybe not, but that would be one of those BPA guys. And then we're about to go watch the wide receivers run. Yeah, that's where I get excited because there are so many that would fit perfectly with Kansas City, especially with the emergence of Rashee Rice. So I look at the Texas guys, Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, to give Kansas City that run after catch guy, the vertical speed that has been missing since Tyreek was traded. Troy Franklin from Oregon, I know, is a popular name. Yeah, that gets mentioned with the Chiefs a lot. And then Xavier Legette, who at points people thought maybe a first-round player. I think he's closer to a tail-end of round 2 player, which would be fantastic out of the Chiefs if he were somehow there.
All right, there's a lot of options and a lot of people that you're going to see on the field today. This is a fun one. I think that this is one of the funnest days to actually, yeah. You get quarterbacks, you get the running backs, you get the wide receivers. I understand it's a little more of the flashier positions to play, but what do you like to look for on days like today?
Man, I just kind of look for those wow moments. I can remember being here when Mahomes threw or when Josh Allen threw, and you had those moments of like, oh my God.
What do you feel like when you see that and you're like, this is a generational talent?
I become like a little kid. Yeah. This even happened. We were watching workouts last night, and it was a tight end who will be drafted in this like 6th round, and I was so excited watching him work out. The people around me are like,
I'm hyped.
What is going on? And it's like, no, just see him hit that sled. So I get giddy, become a little kid, and you try to like bring yourself back down so you're not like, this guy's going to the first round because how well he blocked that sled. Yeah. When in reality, it's like, now he's going to be a 6th round pick probably, but it's still really good. So it's fun. Like, I mean, Josh Allen is the one I'll never forget. He made a throw here where he took a drop back like 5-yard line and threw it like 80 yards. And you're just watching that damn ball go. It's like, that thing's still going. Like, and it, like that is what makes it fun.
Do you have your eyes on any, I know there are big names in this, but maybe some smaller names, or that's probably the best way to say it, smaller names or names that aren't really in the headlines that you're going to be watching for today?
Yeah, definitely. I think with all the running backs, none of them are marquee guys. We won't see a running back in the first round. So I really want to see Jalen Wright from Tennessee. Okay. I love his game. He has that around the edge speed, home run ability. And he was like a 1-year guy at Tennessee, had 1,000 yards, only 4 touchdowns, but their offense doesn't really play to his strengths. Yeah. So I'm excited to see him. Wide receiver is my favorite position to scout. So like when the wide receivers are out there, like all of them, I love all of them. And then with the quarterbacks, we don't have the top 3 thrown here, which is disappointing. But I think Spencer Rattler from South Carolina could put on a show. People have forgotten about him a little bit because
he's been playing college football forever, I feel like, too.
Right. Yeah, and when you lose your job to Caleb Williams at halftime of your rivalry game, that's difficult. But I think he's handled himself really well the last 2 years at South Carolina. He has a huge arms. He might make some of those throws today that we all get excited about.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. It's always fun to also follow along on social media and see how the camaraderie between all of the players, and knowing that they're going to all probably end up on different teams eventually, but they have these moments here at the Combine to kind of go through, hey, you're the only other person here that understands exactly what I'm going through. If you were to do this from the other side, so say you said the wide receivers are probably your favorite. If you're a wide receiver, I'm throwing you in the shoes of a wide receiver, preparing for the combine. What are the things that you're going to hone in on, that you're going to make sure you have perfected so that you can make sure you're on a team with a guy like Patrick Mahomes throwing to you?
Yeah, I think you just want to own every drill, right? But we all have strengths and weaknesses. So if I were a prospect or if I was advising a prospect, I think the thing to hit is like have your routes locked in. Because you're going to run a full route tree today. A lot of things you probably didn't do in college, and then a lot of things you definitely haven't done in the last 3 months. So like train for the 40, yes. Like, but these guys are all naturally athletic, but I think having that route tree locked in, or make sure you've run a gauntlet before, which is where you run across the field, alternating catching passes. You do not want to get beamed in the head with a football today. So, yeah, I mean, I think the position work is more important than a lot of the speed and agility stuff that we all kind of obsess over.
Yeah, it's definitely fun to watch. Also, the interviews are fun to watch as well. To get to see guys. Anybody stand out to you in the interviews that you were like, hey, that kid's he has a little bit of personality I didn't think he had, or maybe vice versa?
Tyler Owens doesn't believe in outer space, and I want to find out more about that.
What does it mean?
But you know what? He had a 12-foot, 2-inch broad jump, so maybe gravity is fake if you can jump like that. Maybe it actually doesn't affect him. But yeah, when he said he didn't believe in outer space and like that the world was flat, I was like, we got to talk about this Texas Tech education they're giving you guys. Like, what is going on out there?
It's a little dicey.
Yeah, I didn't get the opportunity to sit as many interviews as you guys did. I did get a chance to talk to Caleb Williams last night. We were doing a TV hit, and he walked by and was kind of like poking in, and I was like, if you would rather be on SportsCenter, I think they would let you do this hit instead of me. And super funny, like personable, and got to chat for like 5 minutes. And it is like we were saying earlier, like, wow, I actually really enjoyed that. He was funny and humble and like engaging, and I think that's what you want.
I think that's a lot of people have a perspective of a player before they come here to the combine, and this is a great opportunity for a lot of them to be able to show their personality, because we've all been in the college scrums, and it's not always the necessarily most comfortable situation, not the easiest, and you got a lot of rules with the NCAA, and your SID's looking you down, making sure you don't say anything
you don't
wrong.
want your credential pulled.
Exactly. So you're not trying to say anything too dicey. So to see these players' personality come out, it's really cool to see. I would also like to ask you maybe more about some of those guys who have to be in elite positions like Caleb Williams, and in those quarterback positions, you're looking for not only a guy who has personality and who can be a leader and be comfortable, but we even talked about this a little bit off camera. When Herbert was getting drafted, that was kind of just a question mark.
The question,
would he be able to lead a locker room? Yeah. How important is it to find those? It's almost like they have to give them a test of their personality when they're going through these interviews.
I think you want to look for at quarterback. You want to look for a person that people gravitate toward. I remember being at the Senior Bowl, and Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen were on the same team at the Senior Bowl, and the players on that team worship Baker Mayfield. And Josh looks like he's out of Central Casting to play quarterback. But, he's this dude at this time who's like, he's from Wyoming. Yeah. And everyone's kind of overlooking him a little bit. He's kind of quiet. But Baker's out there, like, coaching the damn team.
Yeah.
Like, all the players are, like, rallying around him. And it is those moments where you can see, like, gosh, they will go wherever he tells them to go. They will do whatever he tells them to do. And I think there are those guys. Baker was one. Cam Newton was another, where that's what you want. You want a guy that the player, and Patrick is that way. You want a guy that, whether it be through his personality or his work ethic or his accomplishments eventually, like, you have to have that.
Yeah, you got to demand a room, and you got to have people who mutually respect you, but also feel like they can come to you. It's a tough position to be in. And also tough for the guys who are continuing through this combine. A couple more questions for you. When you're looking at what they're able to do on the field in these interviews, if they don't do so hot here at the combine, but they perform during their collegiate career, how do you assess that?
Yeah, it's tough. That's what makes it tough.
Because some people can tank it.
Absolutely. Texas tight end Jatavian Sanders last night, I expected him to test really well.
Yeah.
He ran a 4.69, which is not a great time. But then his positional workouts were the cleanest of any tight end out there. They were perfect. I didn't see one drop from him. Everything was clean. So that's the hard part of, are you just not a great test taker?
Yeah.
Or is there something more to this? So that's where I will go through my notes and put a red italic and bold on a name, and that just tells me, okay, there's something more here that I need to figure out.
Yeah.
Teams are going to do the same thing. The great news is if you do this draft process right, if you bomb here, you still have your pro day.
Yeah.
So you can always make it up at your pro day. A local guy, Ennis Rakestraw, he didn't bomb here, but he didn't run as well as he wanted, a 4.51. He immediately was like, I'll be a pro day and I'm going to fix that. It's like, okay, love to hear that. That is the right mentality of, didn't run the way I wanted. I have another opportunity now to fix that. For the players who say, hey, I'm not going to run at the combine, you better nail that at your pro day.
Yeah.
Because you got two more chances to run a 40 or, to do a drill. That's it. You have two more chances and then it's over. So it's definitely a risky gamble.
Yeah. I'll ask you last thing. What about players who get hurt here? What are the options for them? Is this, if they haven't done any testing before this, what does their outlook look like?
No, it can truly tank your draft stock. It really can. Alabama corner Kool-Aid McKinstry comes here planning to work out, and they find a Jones fracture in his right foot, which is not a good. That's like the outside where your pinky toe is. It's really a stress fracture, which is important for defensive backs. It can take a player from late round 1 to round 2 or round 3. It really truly can, and that's without. It's not an ACL, it's not an Achilles pop. It's a fracture in your foot, and so it can be pretty hurtful. And we saw Nate Wiggins, who has the fastest 40 time of anyone here. I don't know how you run a 4.28 and strain your groin. And his agent told me he's going to be ready for pro day. He should never run another 40-yard dash in his life if he runs a 4.28 with a bad hip flexor. So, but it unfortunately can really hurt a player's draft stock.
All right, well, we're going to have to see today how offensive linemen were speaking at the podium, and then on Sunday, which is tomorrow, they're going to be on the field as well. Today, we're going to see quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs on the field. Matt, appreciate you being on, bringing us the insights, and we'll continue to bring you guys more coverage from Indianapolis up here for the NFL Combine.